All right, pull up a chair. Today, we're cracking open the vault on the ultimate cold case. I'm pulling out the dusty 66-volume FBI file on the only unsolved instance of air piracy in commercial aviation history. In this explainer, we're going to review the facts, analyze the evidence, and walk through the theories together, just like the seasoned cold case detectives you are. So settle in. The ghost of D.B. Cooper has been haunting these archives for over 50 years, and it's time we take a hard look at why.
I want you to picture this scene. It's Thanksgiving Eve, November 24th, 1971. A guy in a sharp, dark business suit, white shirt, and a cheap black clip-on tie buys a one-way ticket from Portland to Seattle under the name Dan Cooper. Mid-flight, he casually orders a bourbon and 7-Up, hands a note to the flight attendant, and calmly opens his briefcase to reveal what looks absolutely identical to a dynamite bomb. He demands $200,000 in negotiable American currency and 4 parachutes. After landing in Seattle to grab the cash and let the passengers go, he orders the crew back into the air toward Mexico. Then, somewhere over the freezing, pitch-black Pacific Northwest wilderness, he steps out of the back of a Boeing 727 and literally vanishes into history. I mean, who exactly was this guy?
Part 1. Profiling a Phantom, a highly calculated hijacker.
Opening up the very first folder of our dossier, investigators immediately realized they were not dealing with some desperate street thug. Just look at the depth of classified aviation knowledge this guy had. He specifically demanded a 15-degree flap setting, knowing perfectly well it would allow the 727 to fly low and slow, about 170 miles per hour, without stalling out. He requested 4 parachutes. That is a brilliant tactical move because it heavily implies he might take a hostage with him, which totally guarantees he wouldn't be handed sabotaged gear. And the real kicker? He knew the rear air stairs could be lowered mid-flight. That was a CIA supply drop secret that civilian flight crews basically knew nothing about.
Now we gotta shatter a major misconception right here. You might be picturing some smooth Hollywood swan dive off the bottom of those stairs into the night. Well, the aerodynamic reality is a whole lot grittier. At 10,000 feet, flying over 170 miles per hour, those rear stairs couldn't even fully deploy. The wind resistance pushed them up, meaning they trailed almost horizontally behind the plane. Cooper couldn't just casually walk down. He had to awkwardly wedge himself onto that ramp and forcefully launch his body into a freezing, roaring wind tunnel.
Part 2. Following the missing ransom, the forensic trail of $200,000.
Let's track the physical evidence, specifically looking at the search patterns for the ransom money, because this is where things get completely maddening. Investigators pored over air traffic control and military radar data. Flight 305 stayed strictly on the V-230 commercial airway, but this creates a massive geographic contradiction for us. Years later, ransom money was found at Tena Bar on the Columbia River, which is miles away from that known flight path. Theories like the Tena Bar jump or the Washougal washdown try to explain how the cash drifted there, but the radar data stubbornly refuses to support the plane ever being in a position to naturally drop the money in that spot.
And that brings us to maybe the most frustrating number in this entire file. $5,800. Out of a massive $200,000 haul, this is literally all that was ever recovered. In February 1980, an 8-year-old boy was digging a campfire pit at Tena Bar and unearthed 3 rotting packets of $20 bills, still bound by their original rubber bands. The serial numbers were a perfect match for the ransom. But for us detectives reviewing the case, this discovery didn't solve anything. It just created a ton of new questions.
The crucial sticking point here is the timeline. When you map out the geological reality of Tena Bar, things simply do not add up. Geologists found a distinct layer of clay there, deposited by an Army Corps of Engineers dredging operation back in 1974. Well, the money was found buried in a layer of sand sitting directly above that dredged clay. That is a geological impossibility if the money landed there during the jump in 1971. It proves, without a doubt, that the cash arrived at Tena Bar years after Cooper vanished.
If you really want to nail that point home, we look at the microscopic evidence. Citizen sleuths analyzed diatoms, which are microscopic algae found on the recovered bills. They found species of diatoms that only bloom in the springtime. Think about it. If that money had plunged directly into the freezing river in November 1971, it would be covered in winter diatoms. This forensic clue proves the bundles entered the water months, perhaps even years, after Cooper jumped. Someone or something moved that money. Part 3. The suspect lineup. Matching the profile.
All right, Let's bring our prime suspects into the interrogation room and cross-reference their histories against our hijackers' calculated skills. First up is Richard McCoy. The guy literally pulled off a copycat hijacking months later in Colorado. Sounds perfect, right? But the discrepancies are glaring. McCoy was a highly skilled skydiver, way better than Cooper actually was. He also had really prominent ears, totally unlike the composite sketch. And he was a devout Mormon who didn't drink alcohol, whereas our hijacker specifically ordered a bourbon. Ultimately, the flight attendants who spent hours sitting right next to Cooper looked at McCoy and definitively ruled him out.
Then you've got Sheridan Peterson. He had the military experience and he absolutely loved skydiving. He actually seemed to enjoy teasing the media, hinting that he just might be D.B. Cooper. But when the Bureau really pressed him, his alibi of being in Nepal actually held up. And finally, in 2021, modern DNA testing comparing evidence from the plane to Peterson's daughter definitively cleared him. Cross him off the list.
Now look closely at Robert Rackstraw and William Smith. The FBI profilers stressed a key point early on. Cooper wasn't a thrill seeker. He was a man who was financially desperate. Rackstraw was a Vietnam vet with a seriously checkered past who danced around the accusations for decades. Smith was a WW2 naval aviation vet who had just lost his entire pension in the massive 1970 Penn Central Railroad bankruptcy. He had the perfect motive, a sudden, urgent need for cash and a serious grudge against the establishment. Both of these men possessed the exact military aviation knowledge that Cooper utilized.
But man, you have to look at Ted Braden. This guy was a highly skilled covert operator who served in the highly secretive MAC VSOG during Vietnam. He possessed the exact classified knowledge of the 727 air stair capabilities that Cooper exploited. Physically, his dark complexion and athletic build matched the stewardess's descriptions beautifully. A family member even famously described him as having the perfect combination of high intelligence and criminality. He absolutely had the skills, the insider knowledge, and a cold temperament to pull a stunt like this off.
Part 4. The final clue: an open file in the archives. Despite all these incredibly compelling suspects, we have to turn back to the sole pieces of physical evidence left behind on seat 18E. Cooper was meticulous. He retrieved his handwritten note and his cigarette matchbooks just so he wouldn't leave any fingerprints behind. But in his rush to jump into the night, he carelessly left behind a cheap black clip-on tie and a mother-of-pearl tie clip. Decades later, electron microscopes found rare, microscopic titanium particles laced right into the fabric of that tie, strongly suggesting our hijacker worked in a highly specialized aerospace or chemical manufacturing facility in 1971. It was a massive breakthrough. Yet despite that titanium, the diatoms, the radar tracking, and a list of highly capable suspects with deep military backgrounds, I have to deliver the agonizing reality of this explainer. After 45 years, thousands of cleared suspects, and millions of dollars spent investigating, the Bureau officially boxed up the evidence. In 2016, they suspended the active hunt for D.B. Cooper. But I'll leave you with this gritty, lingering thought. Science has advanced light years since 1971. We know for a fact there is untested DNA still sitting on that cheap clip-on tie in an FBI evidence locker right now. So why close the case? Why not run the most advanced genetic genealogy tests available today and finally put a name to the phantom? Until they do, the man who vanished into the freezing rain remains permanently at large. What do you think really happened to the rest of that ransom money? And who do you think took that leap into the dark? Keep digging, detectives.